got to get us some. Look at your friend and say you got to get you some. Everybody got to get some. Man, woman, or child, you got to get you some. I don't care about what religion you with, what color, what race you with. Look at somebody and say you got to get you some.
Yeah.
Oh, nah, nah, nah.
Say French.
Oh, nah, nah, nah.
Oh, nah, nah, nah.
You about to get you some?
Everybody get you some. Get you some. 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 Come on, baby, get you some. Get you some. Everybody get you some. Get you some. Come on, baby, get you some.
Hi guys, it's Celebrity Chef Miraika with Cocktails, Cooking, and Chatting with Celebrity Chef Miraika, and today we're going to talk to Kenya. Kenya is a breast cancer survivor and one of my best friends. Today is the last day of October, the month that is designated to celebrate our survivors and fighters of this horrible disease. So I thought that Kenya was the best person to bring in and actually have a conversation with. So Kenya, I'm glad that you could join us today, ma'am.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome, awesome. We're going to talk about your journey with breast cancer.
Okay.
We're going to share some insightful information with our guests because Kenya does a lot of research. And especially when she began this journey, she really started doing more research. But she's always been one of those girls that's gonna research, get the information, talk to people in the medical field, and get facts. She's that girl. So, when did you find out that you had breast cancer?
I was officially diagnosed September 10th, 2018. The journey started in 2018. I had my first mammogram at 43, so I was 3 years behind. And because of that, there was no baseline. So after my first mammogram, I was told, well, I was mailed the standard mailer that said I had dense tissue. And it also said something about the percentage of women that have dense tissue. And so it was not alarming to me, given that it was my first mammogram and there was a large percentage of women that have dense breast tissue, and there was no follow-up because a mammogram can be scheduled through your gynecologist, which I see once a year, where a primary care physician follows you a little closer. 2 separate hospitals. So there was a break in communication, and the gynecologist's office never contacted me to say, this is something that you need to have looked at.
Wow.
So that was a ball that was dropped.
Wow. Were you shocked when you found out the prognosis, or did you have a general idea that it was a possibility? Like, was there a family history?
So there is a family history that my great aunt had breast cancer, and my family has had a number of cancers. At the time, I didn't feel that a great aunt was a close family member, and now I'm a great aunt, and so I understand how close that actually is, where before I didn't have that reference.
Wow. So what is the one thing that you wish you knew before starting treatment?
One thing that I wish I knew before treatment, as you said, I'm a researcher, and so I arm myself with information. I was pretty well informed, and there are people who documented their battles with breast cancer and other cancers that are available on YouTube and social media. And I had a cousin by marriage who had a different cancer and documented her journey. And so I believe I was as well informed as I could have been.
And that goes to speak to it is so important that when we go through things in life that we share that with people, because what you're telling me is that you were able to gain insight from documentation of people that share their testimonies.
Yes.
And that gave you what you needed in some form to get through. So looking back over your journey, what would you say was the hardest part of it?
I would say, because I'm an empath and I feel people, and I'm the person that feels the room, I believe it was harder for people that cared about me. I'm not going to say it was harder than me going through, but it was hard on them, and that weighed on me. I knew that it was challenging for people whose faith is not where mine is, and our tenacity. And so that was a challenge. Almost having to carry some of my supporters.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I had a lot of other supporters who gave me what I needed. So there was a balance.
There was a balance.
Yes.
I hope I was one that you had to carry.
No.
Because even though I was scared as hell, I kept those thoughts from you.
Right. And I mean, no. I wouldn't say that, but I definitely knew that it weighed on people that cared about me. Yeah. And naturally.
Yeah, that's scary. So how did you find the strength to get through outside of, I know that we have a strong history of, we were raised to believe in God and our faith and things like that, but would you say that's primarily where your strength came from?
Yes, primarily I had to pull on my faith. I have been in servant leadership for years, and you have to walk it like you talk it. And so, there comes a time when all the things, all the biblical accounts that we read about and talk about, we have to emulate. And so my faith was the source of my strength. And my family. We've had losses in my family. My mom was 57. When I lost her, my dad was 51. I'm very, as you are aware, close to my only brother and his children and granddaughter. And so not winning the battle was not an option.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say that either a friend or a family member said to you that meant the most to you during those times?
What meant the most? Well, I can tell you that my oncologist told me that I was one of her strongest patients.
Oh.
And I don't know how many years she's been in oncology, but with the number of women that 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer within their lifetime. So with the number of women that she treated and the close relationship that you have with an oncologist when you go through cancer, that meant a lot.
Right. Did you have to take a leave from work?
I took leave from work during my mastectomy and reconstruction. With chemo, I was given a flexible schedule where I was able to work when I felt up to it. With radiation, I went during my lunch hour.
Wow.
And that was, by the time I finished radiation or went through it, it was exhausting.
Wow.
So I worked for a good part of my journey, except when I could not, in order for my body to heal.
And did you ever go through a depression? Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would not say that I went through a depression, but there were days when I had to fight my way out of the bed. Now, my a military background and presence in servant leadership and is a pusher. Somewhere in a visit, the oncologist said that I could do like 80% of my norm was an expectation. I believe it was somewhere around 80. And she said, you know, you would be down for a couple days, and then around day 3 or 4, you would rebound and start getting your strength back. So by day 3 or 4, if I was still in the bed, my husband said, it's day 3 or 4. It's time to get up. It's time to get up out of the bed. And you understand the context of that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Absolutely.
Day 3 or 4, it was like, it's the day to get up. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, it's a blessing to have a pusher.
Yeah.
When you don't want to get up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, some days I fought my way out of bed. Exhaustion physically and or mentally.
Wow. Guys, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Kenya about some of the things that some of you are wondering. We're going to talk about hair loss and things like that come with the journey, and how Kenya dealt with that. We'll be right back.
Get you some, everybody get you some. Get you some, everybody get you some. Get you some, everybody get you some. Get you some, everybody get you some.
So Kenya, let's talk about hair.
Okay.
Did you lose your hair?
I lost all of my hair, eyebrows, and lashes.
Wow. How did you manage that? Hair is important to us as women. So how was that?
Hair is important. My oncologist prepared me as best she could. She insisted that I cut my hair before my second chemotherapy. And so I did a big chop. My sister-in-law braided my hair and cut the braids, and I had a really nice cut for about a week or so. And after my second chemotherapy, when I started recovering, showered, went to wash the hair, it was a matted mess. The product, had matted into the hair that was no longer attached to the scalp. And I was able to just peel the top off. And so that was a pivotal moment. And I can remember, just telling my husband, the hair, that I lost the hair, and I just crawled in his lap. We cried together, and then he was like, let's go get a wig. And so that's how I threw on a cap, and we went wig shopping. We went to Costco. We had a birthday party for the oldest granddaughter, and so we went to Party City because I made her party favors, and we went to look for wigs, and I scheduled an appointment with a salon that gifts wigs to cancer patients. Mm-hmm. And so that is how we managed the hair loss.
Mm-hmm. Wow. My God, the strength. I can't imagine. I had a recent scare with the abnormal mammogram, and I immediately called her. And she's like, don't panic, blah, 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 blah. Turned out, it's nothing to worry about at this time, but she was my go-to. I was like, I didn't want to call her because I didn't want her to revisit her situation, but I had to call her because I knew she knew. And I just had to, but I just could not imagine what you really went through. I mean, of course, I had a front row seat. She's my friend. But your strength is amazing.
Thank you.
Your strength is amazing. and she tells you what you need to hear if you don't want to hear. Because she has been nagging me before she got breast cancer about exams and taking care of myself.
Right.
So even more so now, but she's that girl. But we're going to continue with the interview. And I guess the next thing we're going to talk about is there a myth that people are told about breast cancer that you find not to be true based on your experience?
So I don't believe that there are myths, but I do feel, and others within the cancer community, some are taken back and even offended by the pink in October. Mm-hmm. You know, some survivors don't want anything to do with anything pink.
Really?
Really. And
wow.
I'm for anything that raises awareness and consciousness. Mm-hmm. Because with all cancers, mm-hmm. Of course, you know, breast cancer is my portion, and so I know, you know, statistically how it impacts primarily women, but all types of cancer. And so I wouldn't say that it's a myth, but sometimes the awareness can become sexualized, you know, with the names for breasts that are not anatomically correct.
Right.
And some survivors take offense.
But aren't there men that get breast cancer as well?
There are men that get breast cancer, but a very small percentage in comparison to women. Mm-hmm. So men also need to do self-breast examinations, mm-hmm. particularly if there's a family history.
Right. So I know that you eventually did chemo and other things as well through the Methodist Hospital.
Yes.
But in addition to that, or before you resorted to that, did you try alternative methods for treatment?
So we did. I didn't try, but I researched. And so my cancer was a stage 3. And that means that it was advanced. It was already in my lymph nodes. And a cancer moves outside of the affected area. When it moves into the lymph nodes are all around your body. And so my cancer had moved into a space where it could have spread. Mm-hmm. And so time was of the essence. Okay. And I will resort to natural medicine first most of the time. However, because of the aggressiveness of my cancer, I had to treat it aggressively. Natural medicine takes time to work.
Okay.
It is not as closely followed by healthcare professionals with testing, and we decided, my husband and I together, that we did not have the time, and I decided that I would go with the Western treatment and then heal my body naturally after the treatment.
Okay. What about food and nutrition? Did that play a role in your treatments or making you feel better? Was there any particular food that you gravitated towards during that time? How important was that with your journey?
So I can say that Methodist Hospital offered a nutrition class, and there were some things that I had to avoid, like smoked meat, which I enjoy, mm-hmm. because, you know, we're in Texas.
Yeah.
And processed.
And your husband smokes meat a lot too.
He does. And processed meats. I had to avoid certain fruit that come from the ground, you know, that are heavy.
And if I remember correctly, didn't you have to start washing your vegetables and fruits with a vinegar and water solution or something?
Yeah.
We have talked about that.
I had to wash my fruit and vegetable in vinegar, and my body threw me into the fast that it needed because chemo kills your taste buds, and everything processed tastes like cardboard. So I gravitated to natural food because an apple is gonna taste like an apple. Peanut butter is gonna taste like peanut butter.
Right.
You know, whereas a pizza tastes like cardboard.
Wow.
So my body threw me into a whole food diet.
Wow.
When my body needed a whole food diet.
So will the cancer come back after treatment?
It can.
How often are you checking up on that?
I do monthly or more self breast examinations, and I follow up with my oncologist every 6 months now because I'm 3 years out from diagnosis. I alternate mammogram and ultrasound every 6 months. So I'm every 6 months there's a test, and I'm seen by a doctor.
Okay. So in layman terms, as easy as you can think to say to someone who is not familiar with terminology, someone who has not had an exam done, someone who doesn't really know what to do. If you had to put it in the simplest way, how would you advise, instruct, or encourage women to give themselves a self-breast exam?
Okay.
And what would they be looking for?
Okay, so after your menstrual cycle, it would be a good time to check your breast because we go through hormonal changes during our menstrual cycle that may cause our breasts to feel different. And so after the menstrual cycle, you can go around your breast with your fingertips in a circular motion from the outside working toward the center. And what you're feeling for is anything abnormal, any knots, any space that doesn't move. Because dense tissue, you can feel it, but if you have an area that's not movable, you want to watch for that. Something else that I learned through my journey is to look for skin puckering, which is visible. And because the cancer was in my lymph node, under my arm became irritated. I thought it was deodorant. Totally went over my head that it could be cancer that has moved under my arm into my lymph nodes. So that's an area you also want to check.
Okay.
So you're checking for any abnormalities. Before I went to the doctor, my area felt bruised. And I'll say this because it may help someone. The way that I discovered the cancer, I was showering and my nipple was tender, which happens, during pregnancy and sometimes through your menstrual cycle. And I'm like, why is my breast tender? Is it time for my cycle? And so I felt the knot when I was showering. And, like any fake believer would do, I laid hands on it and prayed. And so kind of tucked it in the back of my mind and didn't give it much thought. And the area under my arm was more of a concern than the knot. And then the knot became bruised. I was looking in the mirror and it was bruised. And I'm like, what is going on here? Whatever this is, I pray it's going away. And then I lost my sister-in-law to another disease. And it just dawned on me that I needed to take care of myself better. And I had a classmate going through breast cancer publicly on Facebook that raised my consciousness. And she won her battle on the other side. And so all of those things happened. And I said, once I we buried my sister-in-law because, I take care of people. I'm going to see about myself. And I did.
Awesome.
And that is how the cancer was discovered. And I felt it about 6 months after my mammogram. So part of my rationale was, I just had a mammogram. Cancer was not on my radar.
Okay. We're going to wrap up here shortly, but I just have to say that I kind of had an epiphany, and just something I want to point out. We talked about the hair loss, right? This is her hair, guys. This is all her hair, and it came back very close to the texture and everything she had before, and it's beautiful. I just had to say that, like, as she was talking, I'm thinking, like, okay, we need to point out this is her hair. It's not a wig, and it's not weave. That's her hair, and it's natural.
Yes.
And it's beautiful.
Thank you.
But in wrapping up, my last question to you is, how is life after overcoming cancer?
Life after overcoming cancer is very different. When you have to face your own mortality and you realize that, tomorrow is not promised. Our next move is not promised. When you have to face that reality, you navigate life differently. You navigate people differently. Your priorities change. So life after surviving or during survivorship is different, but in a good way.
In a good way. I think you understood your assignment.
Thank you.
We're going to be back. We're going to go in the kitchen. I'm going to make her some quiche. She's kind of weird, y'all. She's not regular. She likes quiche. We're going to make a quiche thing. And we'll have fun doing that, and we'll see you next time.
Everybody get you some. Get you some. 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 Come on, baby, get you some. Get you some. Everybody get you some. Get you some.
I'm a hoe.
What you know? What you know?